please help me welcome to the stage James Isolé from Cognism.
Hi everybody, it's a real pleasure to be here today. My name is James Isolé. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Cognism. Cognism is a B2B sales intelligence provider. We help companies find their next best customer. First, I'd really like to thank Nathan for inviting me to speak. I met Nathan at a SaaS stock in 2019. We were part of a group, an event called SaaS Society, and Nathan hosted the table. And he gave me one of the things that Nathan gave me at that talk was a piece of advice about managing my board, and he urged me to use my board and to actually drive value from my board. Before that, my board had really been just a reporting exercise, a place where I reported my figures, and after that advice, I really made my board to help really plug the gaps that we had in terms of expertise. One of those people was Phil Gollick, who was head of corporate development at Zoom Info, and Phil Gollick really helped us to do the transactions and to do the acquisitions, particularly Kaspr. That saved me at least $1 million in fees from bankers. So, and that should help pay for Latka's magazine for a while. So thank you, Nathan, for that advice. It's small bits of advice that can really help accelerate your growth, and so that's why these events are so key. So this is the story of the revenue growth from Cognism. So as you can see, we've had very consistent revenue growth. Right now, actually, we're end of August, we're at 37 million AER. Our revenue growth has really been a mix of probably about 50% from marketing and 50% from our outbound sales team, and I'll talk more about that as we go through the talk. So over the next 20 minutes, I'm gonna cover a lot of topics. I'm gonna just cover really key points and I think some of the key lessons from Cognism's growth journey. First of all, we're gonna talk about the growth from 0 to 30 million. The three kind of, I think, strengths of Cognism. One is our hiring of international developers. Another one is our growth, how we kind of split marketing between capture demand strategies and creating demand strategies. Then I'm going to look at the M&A. Why do M&A? I love doing M&A. I personally, I don't use any bankers. We have the expertise on the board from Phil Gollick, who used to be head of corporate development at Zoom Info, and I personally drive the transactions, and I really enjoy that. And then we've provided an asset, which is our letter of intent for Kaspr, the template for that, which is on the one of the assets on the drive, and then we just talk about why we did the M&A in terms of how it improves our go-to-market motion, and also about the challenges of driving the M&A transaction in terms of getting to the valuation and structuring the deal. So first of all, international developers. So I found my CTO on using Upwork. So I'm actually a software developer, and that's my background, but I would say I was a pretty terrible coder. So I knew that the first gap that I needed to plug was actually a good head of development. I found my CTO is from Croatia. We hired most of our developers who are actually based in Croatia and Macedonia. We've actually got the average cost of engineers down to 32K. And after the Kaspr acquisition, what we found is that most of their developers were hired in Morocco and Tunisia. Now we're actually building a new office in Tunisia, where the actual average cost of the engineers is around 16K. So one of the key things that I would ask people to look at is looking at international talent and hiring globally. For us, that's really been one of the big advantages that we've had. One of the other key lessons is really to actually build offices in those locations. So actually we have an office in Croatia in Zadar, and we have an office in Skopje in Macedonia, and we're now building a new office in Sfax in Tunisia. What that really helps to do is really build culture, and really helps you to retain that talent. What we've found is that when we've actually had developers that have just worked from home, that they're far less sticky. So that's one of my key lessons, and one of the strengths of Cognism's growth. The next kind of one of the key things that I think we've done really right is around capture demand. So we have a fantastic marketing team. Alice DeCourcy is our CMO. I'd really urge you to follow her on LinkedIn. She provides some fantastic content and guidance. This is the way that I suppose the world should be seen is that the model that we have in our head is that about 3% of anybody in the market is really looking for solutions at any one point of time, and 97% are actually not buyers but need to be warmed up. So the typical capture demand strategy is really, SEO, Google Ads, LinkedIn, bidding on the keywords that our users are looking for. So for us, it's B2B data, and also bidding on competitor keywords. Our key lesson here was we tried to outsource this. I initially tried to outsource this before building a team and really didn't get much success, using agencies. And recently, again, we tried to outsource this to try and get cost efficiencies and found that really that was a disaster. So really, our key lesson here is really to build an in-house team and to really keep the talent and train the talent internally, and to really pair that talent with great mentors from companies that are scaling above you. That's really been the key to our success here. This is our organic traffic, and this is really driven from our create demand strategies. So currently we're about 260K of value from our organic traffic. That's about twice the value, using tools like Ahrefs. It's about twice the value of our nearest competitor. And really here, what we've done to really drive that, and something we did differently this year, is we hired a subject matter expert. So Ryan Resar, who does his cold calling, we actually used him to build a community this year, and that's really worked well for us and created a really good set of differentiated content. So and one of the other things that we've done here is hire content creators in lower cost countries. So we have a lot of marketing staff in South Africa, which has been a great location for hiring in terms of marketing content. And this has really helped us to create differentiated content and to again have double the traffic than our competitors, our nearest competitor that's a little bit above us in size. Jumping into section 2, I'm just going to go through I'm really going to dive into the acquisition, why Cognism's growth and story, and then Kaspr's. So Kaspr was a company that we acquired in France. It was more driven. It was more going after, I would say, that individual user that's buying data on a credit card. So I'm going to also just look at that kind of whole, why PLG, and then how that helps us expand our market. So again, this is just Cognism's revenue. Again, Cognism is really more about we have a direct sales team. So we really have high sales touch points. Our average ACV is from 15K and above, and we don't have any sort of a freemium version. It's how we built the company. We were VC funded, and so that gave us the resources to kind of really at a very early stage build that sales team. Kaspr was actually a bootstrap company. It's really PLG driven. So they have a freemium version. Their average ACV starts at really $500 and goes up to $2,000. So it's a really very different model to Cognism. This is the combined revenue. Really the vision that I had when going after acquiring Kaspr was to kind of fix an issue that Cognism, where when we were actually acquiring those kind of micro and SMB businesses at 15K packages, we really had very poor retention of them. And what we saw when we looked into Kaspr was for that same type of audience, they had on annual contracts, they had about 110% plus net retention, whereas we were around about the 60% level. So really what we showed was that pricing and how they developed their products, we hadn't really created the best customer experience or the best customer journey. But by combining the two companies together, we could create this perfect customer experience where we could take customers that starting on a far smaller package that could self-serve and didn't need all the sales support, and then move them along to the higher ACV packages as they grew. So that was really the vision and what we wanted to build coming together, and that should create the perfect, highest, most accelerated customer journey. So this is what Alan was the founder of Kaspr, and this was what he said about it. Kaspr is a very good PLG data provider, but what we lack in commercial power to address larger deals. Cognism has one of the strongest sales forces in our industry, and the combination of the two will allow us to achieve great things. With Cognism's knowledge and resources, Kaspr can become one of the most powerful PLG data providers in Europe and smash the competition. I mean, at the heart of any M&A transaction or acquisition is really that narrative, that story that you're trying to bind everybody together with. And this was the narrative that I built and I took and talked to Alan about in the team, which really was the common vision that then helped the transaction go ahead, and which was the vision that was shared with the board. I think it's super important that right at the beginning of the transaction, if you're leading that M&A transaction, that you have a narrative, that you have a really well-defined narrative about when these two organizations come together, how are you then going to be a superpower? So these are the different skills that come together. Kaspr was really a PLG motion. They had created a far more simple product that was really aimed at those individuals that are putting and buying, purchasing on a credit card. Cognism is really an organization that is selling at people who are buying at the org level. So they have org level authority to buy, and we're really having more features to actually sell at to help benefit those org level buyers. And because you've got far more sale touch points to be able to sell that org level solution, you have to speak to more buyers. Of course, the ACV has to be higher. Together, we can create that kind of like perfected journey where individuals can come in and initially start on their credit card, and as they grow and expand, then we can sell them the benefits of moving to an org level solution when they're ready for that change. So this is how the transaction took place, and the kind of order, and why. So back in September 2021, I was approached by one of my salespeople that we had started to see Kaspr in our deals. Now, I hadn't heard of Kaspr before, and they just added a UK sales rep, and so they started to appear in our deals. So I reached out onto LinkedIn. It was as basic as that, and managed to get hold of the CTO. And then the CTO put me in touch with the CEO. We had a quick Zoom call, and then what I immediately did was fly over to Paris with that vision that I talked about. Because at that time, we really felt that we were missing that PLG element. We had tried to build it internally, but that hadn't worked out. So I really felt at that point we really needed to acquire that PLG expertise and really have a part of our organization that was really good at PLG and where we could concentrate that skill. So I engaged with Kaspr, sold them that vision. Then in November, we created the letter of intent. So Phil Gollick, who has that expertise. So again, we didn't need to use a banker, which is great. And I'd really urge that if you're doing M&A, like you can do this yourself. You don't need a banker, and you can save millions of dollars in fees. Like it isn't that complicated to do that, and I really feel that it's super important for you as a founder to drive the transaction, because it will help the success in terms of the relationships you build for the post merger, for the post merger success, for that to be successful. So we did the letter of intent. The letter of intent, which again I've provided the resources, is a really important step. I mean that's really you negotiate. That's where you build, you ground expectations, and so it's a really key step to get that right and to get all the expectations set correctly between the company you're acquiring, your own board, and your own staff at the same time. We did due diligence and technical financial due diligence in January 2022, and kicked off the legal process, and then the transaction completed in March 2022. So it was fairly quick. I mean, Kaspr is actually a fairly small organization. It was 14 people. Again, I threw a lot of personal time into it to make sure that it happened quickly, and also did lots of trips to Paris, which was no bad thing, to make sure that I built the relationships with the Kaspr team. In terms of, so in the next section, we're just going to have a quick look at the LOI, the structure of the deal, and what we learned. So in terms of the letter of intent, you can have a look at that on the disc, and if you've got any questions, like please connect to me afterwards, and I'm happy to explain anything or go into anything in more depth. I mean, one of the big lessons through another M&A transaction at the moment is at this stage is really to understand, is the founder ready to sell? Like this is where you can really drag out a lot of the issues and really find out like where at the other company are the doubts, and then you've got, as the driver of the transaction, it's my job to kind of challenge those doubts and tackle them in the letter of intent to get everybody comfortable with the transaction. So again, this part of the process is really about building relationships and closing off doubts. Another big area here is jurisdiction issues. So Kaspr was a French company. There's a lot of negative noise about France as a country to do business in. So far, we're having a very good experience. Here we did have one problem around tax on equity. So it was actually more tax efficient to do a pure cash transaction, and so that's ultimately how we structured the deal. So the deal structure here. So of course the big debating point is valuation. And we've just gone through a period in time where valuations have been sky high, and when actually we started this transaction, there were deals being done in the VC community in our space where multiples were like 40 times revenue. So of course that wasn't going to fly with our board, and so one of the things that I really had to do was really find that common ground on valuation between the founders and my board, which is, we're VC funded, so I've got a lot of VCs to kind of debate valuation with there. One of the methods and tactics that I used in terms of negotiation is really, talk about valuation multiples that are higher on the current AR, and then with the board talk about the multiple at the close of the transaction. So you can talk about a lower multiple. So that was just one tactic so that I could actually meet everybody's expectation. It's just really about talking about the same thing at different periods of time that would again help to find agreement. In terms of the way that we structured it, because we didn't do equity, we actually built an earn-out structure. So there are cash payments at different milestones, and that's worked really well as well in terms of incentivizing, just in the same way as equity. The first time we actually did an acquisition, we did an acquisition in 2020 with a company called Meltastic. That was majority equity, and I haven't really seen any difference between doing it with equity or doing it on this earn-out structure. And actually, from our perspective, because we did this cash and not equity, it's really cheaper if you think about it from our perspective as a fast growth company. And actually, the other party preferred cash. I think everybody always prefers cash, generally. And this the overall that structuring the deal with this and communicating on the multiple in different ways to the acquiring company and to our board really helped to get everybody on board for the transaction. So I guess to summarize, and I've gone pretty quickly through that. What I've covered over there is really the keys to our growth is really for Cognism has really been us being international, hiring international developers. For us to grow faster in the future, I'm going to find new locations. Again, right now we're looking at North Africa because it's really untapped and there's great talent there. We've created an amazing way of capturing, of growing with this capture demand and creating demand strategies and splitting those out and really putting resources in both. I mean, in terms of create demand, really that's like a year payoff. But again, as you see now, we have double the amount of organic traffic than our nearest competitor. So again, it's really paid off, and that investment's really paid off. In terms of why do M&A, inorganic growth is really beneficial. It's really beneficial to plug the gaps that you might have in your own skills and your own team. It really does also help to stop competition, that's been a key for. I think that's Kaspr would have been a big problem overall if they had grown in the US market as independent, and of course adding product capabilities. And in terms of the M&A playbook, hopefully you can all dive into that real letter of intent, and that'll give you a great template to think about deals. If you have any questions on that, please, happy to answer them. We've now got this new go-to-market motion, which is fantastic. Right now, we're using Kaspr to enter new markets, so we're about to kick off Spain. So the aim is that for us going forward is that we'll go into new markets with a PLG motion. Once we get a certain amount of traction, then we'll set up the direct sales teams to sell deals at a higher ACV once we're in key accounts. That for me is extremely exciting and means we can grow at a faster pace. And in terms of valuation, again, in terms of negotiating, the key there is really to be able to like look at the to discuss the expectations of the company you're going to acquire, and look at the expectations of the of your board, and then find ways to discuss the valuation in different ways to make everybody happy, which is easy to do if you just use time as one of those methods to set people's expectation in the right place. So that's so if thank you again for letting me present, Nathan, and if you have any questions, please contact me, connect to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer anything in more depth.